The next time a major wildfire or snowstorm hits Colorado, the state could be on its own to recover. The Trump administration plans to make it harder for local governments to get federal assistance after natural disasters. Our Mark Salinger looks at the concern here, headed into the heart of fire season.
Colorado is no stranger to emergencies.
We've had a lot of disasters in Boulder County.
Now how the state recovers could change.
They're moving things to the state. And how that plays out, I don't know.
Mike Chard is the director of the Office of Disaster Management in Boulder. President Biden approved a major disaster declaration for Boulder County after the Marshall Fire. It released federal funds to help with recovery efforts.
We look at the number of big disasters we've had in Boulder County. Without that federal assistance, we would have had a real hardship.
The Colorado Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Management says the Trump administration is proposing making it 4 times more difficult to get federal assistance to recover from disasters. Instead of being eligible for assistance when a disaster results in more than $11 million in uninsured losses, the proposed changes require a minimum of $45 million in the state. Colorado calls the proposal a budget buster.
There's no local budget that can handle that amount of damage and be able to recover effectively right now.
Lori Hodges runs emergency management in Larimer County. A major disaster declaration was approved there after the Cameron Peak fire. Counties and states foot the bill for recovery efforts and are then reimbursed by FEMA for damages to public infrastructure. If a fire of that size were to happen again, Lori says the county and the state would have to foot the bill themselves.
A Cameron Peak fire would not have qualified under the new thresholds, correct?
The state says the Trump proposal would hurt survivors and hinder access to aid during emergencies.
I believe there's some opportunities within this that can be leveraged. I believe also there'll be some things that we don't know that will be unintended consequence.
In a state that will continue to see more disasters, there's a lot still left to learn about what might change before the next one.
My number one concern is to make sure that whatever changes occur, because change is inevitable and not everything, is that they're not eroding the capabilities that we've built here in Boulder County and that we don't see a drop in public safety or in the recovery space.
So where this will have the most impact is those middle-sized disasters. Huge fires like the Marshall Fire, for example, that caused tons of damage to public infrastructure, those will still likely get federal funds. But when you have smaller disasters that are still expensive, that's when the state is going to have to shell out a heck of a lot of money for aid and recovery, Kyle.
And this is not just a bluff by the Trump administration. They're already doing this.
Yeah, we're already seeing this start to play out across the country. You look at Arkansas. They had a bunch of major storms back in March. They applied for FEMA aid for a federal disaster declaration. They were denied by FEMA. This is a Republican state led by a Republican governor, and they were still denied. Now, all those state lawmakers are trying to court the Trump administration to say, no, we really need this money.
Yeah, lest anybody think it's a red versus blue thing, he turned down a red state very prominently. All right, Mark Salinger, thank you. A judge just dropped the charges against 3 officers who are going to go on trial for their roles in the shooting of Christian Glass. Part of the deal, according to an attorney for the Glass family, is that those officers have to make a training video showing other law enforcement how to intervene in a way that they did not. In June of 2022, Glass called 911 in Clear Creek County as he was having a mental health crisis. The 22-year-old had crashed his car and he was freaked out. He refused to get out of the vehicle when deputies arrived. Former deputy Andrew Bune broke the car window, shot Glass with beanbag rounds, fired a taser at him, then shot him 5 times, killing him. Bune was convicted of criminally negligent homicide, got 3 years in prison. Bune's supervisor pleaded guilty in 2022 to failing to intervene, got 2 years probation. 4 other officers were still awaiting trial for failure to intervene. Today, a judge dropped the charges against an Idaho Springs officer, a former Georgetown officer, and a state trooper. There's a former Georgetown marshal who is now the only person still scheduled to go on trial for failing to intervene. Voters in Colorado will likely be asked to approve additional money for school meals that are provided free to kids. State legislators passed a bill today, last day of the legislative session, to go back to voters for more money. This idea still needs the governor's okay. Voters first approved the Healthy School Meals for All program in 2022. It added a new tax on households making more than $300,000 a year. The program's supposed to fund breakfast and lunch for all students, regardless of how much money their family makes. The popularity of those meals and the cost have exceeded the revenue collected to fund that program. So there likely will be 2 measures on the ballot in November to ask voters to maintain the existing funding and then request an even larger tax, again on households making more than $300,000 a year. Shift happens, and Xcel Energy is a shifty company in that its rates for electricity move around on you. This fall, Xcel will shift the most expensive rates to later in the evening. Our Marshall Zellinger is sorting through all this shift so you don't have to.
The feedback about Xcel and the Public Utilities Commission shifting expensive on-peak electricity rates from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. to 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. later this year is not great. I already cook later, keep up on laundry later. I simply cannot adjust any later, wrote Kavy from Denver. Diane in Englewood said, I would have to delay making dinner till 9 p.m. and then eat at 10 p.m. This is not reasonable.
This is in all caps with an exclamation mark. This is not a bill increase.
As the PUC approved the October start date and the price Xcel will charge based on the time of day and time of year, the commissioners again defended it as likely causing no change to your bill. Steve in Centennial wrote to the PUC, could I request to see the data on the analysis done to show the slight savings or no change in the bill? Well, the PUC estimates that 83% of usage is during off-peak hours. Get your Xcel bill. Your current usage will help you know if you will benefit from this change or not. Take your off-peak kilowatt hours and divide that by the total kilowatt hours. If the number is 83% or greater, you have a good chance of having a similar or reduced bill when this takes effect in October. If not, you might see an increase in your bill. When will you stop shifting the money around and make my bill go down?
Over the long term, as we go through this transition, we are moving to a cheaper, more stable energy source that will start to bring rates down.
PUC Director Rebecca White explained that energy is cheaper to generate earlier in the day. Think wind and solar. Looking into the future, it's expected that demand will be highest between 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. when it's most expensive to generate electricity.
Right now, our utilities have to build a system for peak demand. So they have to build all the plants and all the resources to fit really a couple hundred hours a year.
The belief is if people start using less in that on-peak demand period, Xcel won't need to build more and rates in the future can go down. The off-peak period in the wintertime, which accounts for 8 months of the billing year, that's going to go down, which is how the math works in your favor, really. So the longer amount of time over the course of a year, over those 20 hours of off-peak, will be cheaper than it is now. It's just that the expensive part, Kyle, gets to be like, I think in the wintertime, it's 5 cents per kilowatt hour more starting in October than it is now. And so, this is where math majors are really good at this, but I just know that math I gave you, take your kilowatt hours for off-peak, divide it by your total kilowatt hours. If it's around 83%, don't freak out. Make your dinner when you say you're going to make your dinner.
Yeah, I was going to say, this all makes sense, right? You understand the motivation of it, peak versus off-peak and how incentives work to change what people do. But then it's also just kind of sad to think about all these families huddling in the dark at 9 p.m. eating dinner.
So many people are freaking out about this. And I will say this, if 10 years from now rates aren't going down because people made shifts, then we'll have a story to be like, wait a minute. A decade earlier, you said, we make these changes, our bills are probably going to go down because we're going to start using more solar and wind and yada, yada, yada. If that doesn't happen, this isn't working.
We've been putting up with that shift for years, and you want the rewards. All right, Marshall Zellinger, thank you. Hey, speaking of how energy works in our state, it looks like voters in Pueblo are not interested in firing their energy provider. It's a huge rejection for city leaders down there who asked voters to drop Black Hills Energy over huge rate hikes. There was a special election last night, and 77% of voters rejected the city's plan. That count's not official yet. The city council wanted to either find a cheaper alternative for power or set up a city-run utility itself. They said they wanted more oversight. They were not thrilled with Black Hills requesting an 18% rate hike increase this year. Studies commissioned by both the city and Black Hills suggested that an alternative was a long shot. It could cost the city like $1 billion. Apparently, voters not having it. So the city's next chance to cut ties with Black Hills is in 2030. There is no such thing as an easy time to work in agriculture, but certainly there's a lot more concern now about the impact of tariffs piled onto everything else for Colorado's farmers and ranchers. So not a great moment for the federal government to also pull funding for a program focused on mental health in the ag community, a program aimed at preventing suicide in rural Colorado's had to pause its work. Together, we're going to get that thing up and running again at this crucial moment. This week's Word of Thanks microgiving campaign supports the AgWell program from the Rocky Mountain Farmers Union Educational and Charitable Foundation. AgWell, as it's known, works to address the mental health crisis that exists in farming and ranching communities, where the suicide rate is twice that of other communities. AgWell creates events and spaces where Colorado's farmers and ranchers can connect to talk about all the usual struggles, right? Severe weather, drought, volatile markets for their products, the pressure of keeping a family business afloat for generation after generation. And it's at those events and gatherings that they can figure out who in their community is truly on the verge of a breakdown or self-harm, and then get those folks the immediate help that is out there. It's work that saves lives. AgWell pushes through the isolation that can sometimes be part of life in agriculture to let Colorado's farmers and ranchers know they're not alone, there is help, there are options out there. Based on the consistency of your incredible generosity for almost 5 years now, the folks who run AgWell are pretty confident they're not only going to be able to restart their programs based on your donations, they will be able to keep them going at least through the end of next year. So let's do what we do together each week. Scan the QR code on your screen, text the word thanks to 303-871-1491. We'll shoot you that link to donate. You've proven how $5 adds up when a ton of people are in on it, so as always, I will match the first 50 donations of $5 to get us going. 5,000 of you have signed up to be a monthly donor to the Word of Thanks Fund. That is why AgWell has new hope for the future, because those recurring donations have started our recent micro-giving campaigns with more than $30,000 in gifts. A city council in Colorado had planned to publicly praise Scientology. We asked why. Then they suddenly decided not to publicly praise Scientology. And now we know why one of Denver's most famous spots goes all out for the Avs and ignores the Nuggets. That's next. The city of Brighton quietly dropped a plan to publicly praise Scientology last night after we asked questions about it. City leaders had falsely claimed to local journalists that the request to honor Scientology with a proclamation had come from the community. Emails show it actually came from a PR rep for Scientologists in California. Last night, without discussion, Brighton City Council removed that pro-Scientology proclamation from their agenda. Seeking the endorsement of elected leaders is something that Scientology has done for decades. Leaders in Denver ended up in a promo video for Scientology a decade ago. Reports showed that municipalities across America have had to walk back or apologize for boosting Scientology, apparently because they did absolutely no research on the movement that critics say is a dangerous cult. A City of Brighton spokesperson says city staff are going to suggest a policy change later this month to add some kind of scrutiny to their proclamation process. In this case, emails show that Scientologists in California asked Brighton's mayor to publicly praise their movement, and he agreed without hesitation.
Our latest spring storm is headed east out of the state, but not before sending another wave of showers of rain and snow along the Front Range and over elevated terrain over the next 1 to 2 hours. We had enough of a break today in the cloud cover that we made it into the mid-50s, so not as cold as yesterday, and some areas across eastern Colorado trending some 10 to 20 degrees warmer than this time yesterday. Winds will shift, ushering in a drier air mass. The storm is spinning east of us near Wichita, but continues to lift bands of rain back into the Front Range, the latest one coming through the I-76 corridor toward Denver. So a few showers, little thunder, lightning not out of the question. And we'll see gradual clearing. We'll see the showers come to an end. And when the skies clear, temperatures are going to drop into the 30s tonight. We'll stay in the 50s until about 10 o'clock. Then we'll drop into the 40s. We have weather headlines that include a warmer, drier day tomorrow ahead of a really nice weekend. And when I say a really nice weekend, I mean sunshine Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday with temperatures in the 80s. Next chance for showers will be Wednesday of next week.
Denver's famous Larimer Square is taking down its avalanche decorations this week. Now their playoff run is over, but don't go looking for Nuggets banners there as their playoff run continues. The owner of both of those teams tells us, it's all good, it's all good. Nuggets get celebrated elsewhere. We had asked about this earlier in the week, just curiosity, right? And now we've heard back from Kroenke Sports, which says Larimer Square has traditionally gone all out for the Avs, while Union Station decorates for the Nuggets. Gives the two fan bases a distinctive place to go downtown, particularly when both of those teams are playing on the same night. which we saw this year, including the day of their dueling Game 7s, which were on TV at the exact same time.
It is a one-of-a-kind event, and it's absolutely amazing.
Kids who are deaf or hard of hearing can often feel excluded. Not today, not in Aurora. That's next. Sports are often naturally sorted by who's competing and who's on the sidelines. Our Byron Reed went to Aurora to show us an effort to get more student athletes off the sidelines and into the action.
3, 2, 1, go!
Athletes need a good coach.
I enjoy being a role model for them.
Daisy Nunez is a severe needs para at Lansing Elementary School. She's here supporting her students at an event she loves.
You know, when I was younger, I participated in this, and now with my job, I have to make sure everything's good and that they're having fun.
Nunez is in a support role at the Goberis Deaf and Hard of Hearing Track and Field Day, an annual event for students across the Denver metro area.
Every year we have an annual track and field day for kids who are deaf or hard of hearing, and we bring together volunteers in our community, dozens of school districts, and we get out and have fun and celebrate our uniqueness.
Sandra Goddard is the president and CEO of the Marion Down Center. The nonprofit is hosting the day to let students know they're seen.
And some of these kids don't see other kids with unique qualities like their own until they get together in an event like this.
Students participate in 11 games like long jump, parachutes, and an obstacle course with help of volunteers who know American Sign Language.
And the key is support, extra support, sometimes interpreters, sometimes technology, and usually those supports can really make their disability a non-issue.
The day is meant to be inclusive for students with hearing differences. It's part of a mission shared by the Colorado Department of Education.
So it's really a great time for the little ones to see some of those older kids succeeding and being cool, being a part of the in crowd, regardless of their hearing difference.
All right.
Daisy hopes the day will be a teachable moment for students who see her as more than a coach.
They don't always get answers from a deaf adult. Now I'm a deaf adult, and so I can give them what I wish that I had.
For Next,
I want to support the kids, and I want to be a role model for the kids too.
I'm Byron Reed.
That is fantastic. We are back here with your feedback next. Thank you. Farming and ranching is demanding, often isolating work, and it is why suicide is at crisis level in many of those communities. A program called AgWell connects rural Coloradans with the mental health help, but it recently lost federal funding. We're going to help them restart their programs with our donations tonight. AgWell's community building events, their workshops, their peer support helps to connect Coloradans in ag with mental health assistance. Scan the QR code on your screen or text the word THANKS to 303-871-1491 to get the link to join me and a bunch of other Coloradans in helping AgWell. Keith writes in on the pun of the day, your ability to shift with the news makes you the best at this shift. I would like a Clark Unleashed episode. Interesting question, Keith. If we were to put together a, shall I say, less formal program, would you be interested in watching that? What would you all want on that less formal program? Let me know. I have some ideas too. We'll have a conversation about it. And I'll see you next time.